Bonsoir à tous. Je crois que nous attendons le secrétaire général. Merci. Ok, bonsoir à tous, chers frères et sœurs de la communauté congolaise, et puis nos frères et sœurs dans CoopCongo. Nous sommes encore contents de partager encore une fois cette journée pour apprendre comme tout. Monsieur David Kalumbu, je crois que David Kalumbu, vous pouvez mute votre... Je n'arrive pas à le mute. David Kalumbu, s'il vous plaît. OK. Donc, nous sommes encore là pour notre session de dialogue toutes les 2 semaines. Merci d'avoir voulu partager ce temps avec nous. On a commencé un peu en retard compte tenu de... Il y a eu un aspect là très bizarre avec Zoom où il vérifie bien des choses maintenant avant de commencer les sessions. Ça, c'est nouveau pour nous. C'est ce qui a fait un petit retard. Nous nous en excusons. Please forgive us. We had a small issue on security with Zoom. They are now verifying and sending codes, something we were not used with. It never happened before, so that's why we're a little bit delayed. So welcome to this session of the CoopCongo Dialogue, where today we will again be blessed with one of our own, Mr. Eric Malebe, who will talk about preparing the retirement. Monsieur Eric, aujourd'hui, va nous parler encore de notre dossier de finances et il sera avec nous encore dans la session prochaine. Et après ça, on va passer à une autre personne. Nous avons déjà 4 sessions comme ça confirmées pour les finances et les problèmes socio-économiques que nous avons dans notre vie normale. Merci d'être venu. Et comme information auprès de ceux qui sont venus pour la première fois, ça c'est la coopérative financière des Congolais que nous voulons que ça devienne la banque des Congolais en Afrique du Sud et dans le monde. Dans notre processus où nous cheminons pour la banque, juste pour information, nous attendons que la Banque centrale puisse terminer la révision de nos dossiers auprès de il y a la cellule qu'on appelle CBDA, Cooperative Bank Development Agency. C'est cette cellule qui est en train d'étudier notre dossier afin qu'il puisse donner l'accord auprès d'une autre cellule de la Banque centrale qui s'appelle Prudential Authority. Et nous prions vraiment que d'ici avril, mai, au plus tard juin, que nous ayons notre licence pour opérer assez librement. Donc, ça va, c'est long, mais ça vaut la peine. Et nous avons maintenant tout ce qui est requis pour qu'on nous donne la licence. Donc, il est question qu'ils puissent étudier les dossiers et nous donner cette licence. Nous avons essayé de pousser un peu, s'ils pouvaient nous permettre d'activer certaines des actions qui sont liées peut-être aux petits prêts, des petits montants, mais ils ont refusé, ils ont dit devons attendre. On ne peut pas prêter même 500 rentes, même pas 10 rentes. C'est dommage, nous devons attendre, mais ça vaut la peine que nous puissions démarrer avec cette licence qui va nous permettre d'activer beaucoup d'actions au sein de notre communauté. Pour ce qui est de nos réunions, je pense que nous sommes déjà le mois de février, c'est la fin de notre année financière. Nous allons donner tout ce qui est comme dossier financier auprès de personnes qui peuvent nous aider pour faire l'audit et nous pouvons programmer notre AGM. In a nutshell, we're still waiting for the central bank to process our file, just in a nutshell, so that we can access the official banking license in South Africa that will help us to trade freely within the confine of the license that will be given to us. And we are waiting for that. And we are happy that all the documents are fine so far. So they have not told us anything which can come back with our file. So far, all is good. And also, we already at the end of our financial year, which is February every year. So we will very soon plan for our AGM, which you will be informed, and so that we can get together again, review the year that we spent and plan for next year. Et puis, pour information, vous savez que nous avons déjà notre administratrice, Sarah Kabengele, qui est au bureau maintenant. Donc, on va vous informer pour le numéro que nous avons, un landline du bureau, pour qu'elle puisse, quand elle vous contacte à ce numéro-là, bien sûr, on va chercher qu'elle appelle à des heures de convenience. Elle va informer d'abord. Si c'est ce numéro-là, vous savez que c'est le bureau de CoopCongo. Donc, I'm saying you now know we have our own administrator at the office. So she will be reaching out to CoopCongo members for various matters, and you should know that is our office number, which is +27 12 320 2079. Donc, notre numéro du bureau, c'est 0027 12 320 27 9. I think with that, we can pass to Mr. Malebe. Je crois qu'avec ça, nous pouvons passer à la présentation de M. Malebe pour que nous puissions partager ce qu'il a réservé pour nous aujourd'hui. Mr. Malebe, est-ce que vous pouvez partager votre écran?
Yes, un instant. Merci, Chairman. Let me do that. Okay. Is my screen visible, Chairman?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we can see you. We can see it.
I was on mute.
No problem. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the welcome. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit shorter because I really want to encourage discussions if we can. Our topic for today is retirement planning. It's a very broad topic. And for some of you that were in our previous discussion 2 weeks ago now, we were talking about savings and investment. And what we said was that savings is for emergency or storing your money, and investment is for capital growth. for generating wealth. And we looked at different characteristics of those two concepts and what we can do in terms of assets to either generate wealth or to save money for emergencies and things like that. Okay. And another key thing we also said was that in order for you to invest, you need to have what we call discretionary income. Okay. So after you've paid your bills, you've taken care of the necessities in the household, you've paid all the debts, you will then have some money left over, which we refer to as discretionary income. And ideally, you want to use that discretionary income to invest that money in any kind of product or in any kind of asset, because we talk about assets, we don't talk about products. Okay, so the concept of retirement planning comes into that aspect, because retirement planning is essentially planning for your retirement. Okay, so depending on which country you are in, if you're in South Africa, there's what is called a retirement age, which is 65 for men. And what that basically means is after 65, you have to leave the place of employment. Okay, there's also what we call early retirement age, which is 55. That is significant, and I'll explain to you why those things are significant. But essentially, with retirement planning, it fits into the concept of investments, because you are now saving, or you are investing for a long-term objective, which is retirement, which is when you are unable to work, where you're unable to earn the same amount of income that you were earning before. Okay, so the concept of retirement is not far from investment. It's just investment with a specific focus or specific goal. Now, what makes retirement special is that retirement is very closely monitored by governments, particularly in South Africa, where the government's fear is that if you do not have sufficient retirement or planning for your retirement, you'll be dependent on the state. As people get older, they need medical services. They need financial support from the states for grants and things like that. So the thinking for governments, particularly in South Africa, but I think generally around the world, is that retirement needs to be protected. That this is from the employer side or the individual side. From the company side, they also discourage companies from making risky investments with people's retirement money. So for example, if this is money that I'm putting away from retirement, I should not be able to put it in a very risky asset. And if you think back to the assets that we looked at in our first session, you'll be able to, and I'll show you again, but you'll be able to determine which are considered risky assets and which are considered less risky assets. And retirement basically says that you need to invest your money in low risk assets because it's now for a long-term defined goal. So in retirement, we always have a few problems that we're trying to solve. The first problem is your loss of income when you stop working after the age of 65. But also when you retire, we have to remember that you could live for another 30, 40, maybe even 50 years after your retirement age. And you need to have a sufficient income to buffer you for those years. So retirement is about what happens when you retire and then what happens after you retire. And then what we'll also look at is what are the different sources of retirement options there are in the market. So a lot of you will know the terms pension, provident funds, retirement annuity, preservation funds. Again, as I've said in the previous presentation, in the financial world, there's a lot of terms that are used that can sometimes be confusing, but they're very simple concepts really when you break it down. So what we'll try to do without making this too legalistic type of approach, to try and break down some of the terms that get used in the market. Okay, so retirement is very important. And if we look at the importance of retirement in a country like South Africa, or even in the African continent, there's very few people that are able to retire financially independent. And financially independent means retire with no worries, no debt, no concerns about how you're going to be able to eat or medical care or things like that. It's very low. The statistic I got was 15% in South Africa, but I believe it's actually much lower than 15% of people are able to retire financially independent. So it's a very serious problem. And that's why governments spend a lot of their time putting laws in place to try and govern and restrict how people use their retirement money. So the biggest challenges we have with retirement money is that people are living longer. That is the challenge in the retirement industry, because that means that after you retire, you still need funding, or you need money to live for maybe another 30 or 40 years, as I've said. So your money has to outlast you. If you only planned to live, if you only did your retirement plan for 10 years, for example, you're going to run out of money. So that is a problem that retirement planning tries to address. Retirement planning tries to reduce your risk of being a burden to your family. And I know this is maybe different in our culture, because with us, the family is with us, we stay with our family. But I think if we are planning things the way we can, especially with retirement, it should not be a financial burden. We should be in a position as a community where our families can retire financially independent, because really the biggest problem is a lack of planning. It's not always a lack of money, or it's just we don't really think about these things. So retirement planning is critical in our community. And then the last one, obviously, is to maintain a standard of living. So when you retire, you may be able to retire with, if you're lucky, 60% of your income that you were getting when you were working. For some people, that's okay. It's more than enough. But if you still have, oh, sorry, can I please ask, there's someone there that's not on mute. Okay, merci. So maintaining a standard of living, typically when you retire, your pension or your provident fund will pay you 60%. If you're lucky, 70% of the income you were getting when you were working. For some people, that may be enough, but for many people, it may not be enough. Especially, we know about things like inflation. If your bond is not paid off by the time you retire, you're still paying for that. And then you have to remember as well, your pension is taxed. It's taxed as a salary, as an income. So on top of all the planning you have to do, you have to take into account that you'll always be paying tax. And that has to be taken as part of your planning. And a key thing to remember that is it's never too early to start planning for retirement. It can be too late for some people, but it's never too early. It has to be a constant thing that you consider, because those variables change over time. There's a lot happening in the world, a lot can change, but you have to start already planning for retirement. And ultimately, all we're saying here is not that you must put away a certain amount every month, but it's just to start planning. I think that's the critical thing here, is the mindset of how do we plan for retirement? How do I plan for 10, 15, 20 years from now, or even after retirement, 20 years after retirement? It's just a mindset. I think that's what we have to get right in our community. And that's what I want us to try and explore in today's presentation. Okay, so because retirement is guarded by the government, there's a lot of laws that govern the retirement fund space. Okay, so I'm going to refer to the term retirement fund, okay? But within retirement fund, we have what you will know as retirement annuities. You'll have pension funds, or pension that you get from your work. You'll have provident fund. You'll have preservation fund. All of those things are governed by what's called the Pension Funds Act, and they fall under retirement funds, okay? So in terms of the law, they see all of those things as the same thing as retirement funds. Now, why that is important is because retirement planning or retirement funds is not dissimilar from a normal investment. So when you are investing a money in a unit trust, that's a fund, it's a unit trust fund, or I don't know what else you could, maybe an exchange traded fund, all those other products that are in the market that ask you to give money every month and they invest that money somewhere. Those are all funds. They're different types of funds. Now, retirement fund is a fund specifically packaged for retirement. Okay, so once a fund is called a retirement fund, there are two main laws that apply to them. Okay, there's the Pension Funds Act, and those are the acts that govern all the pension funds in the retirement fund space. And then there's the Income Tax Act. Okay, and I spoke about the different taxes. We'll get into more detail about the different tax that you need to take into account. So the Pension Funds Act treats retirement funds a little bit different from how they treat any other investment fund. Number one, the Pension Funds Act ensures that when you have a retirement fund, it's protected from insolvency. What does that mean? If you go bankrupt, you started a business, the business failed, or you didn't manage your debt properly and everything gets repossessed, the retirement fund cannot be attached to that claim. Okay, and that's very important because what the Pension Fund Act does is it gives the authority of the pension fund or of the retirement fund to a board of trustees. Okay, and these trustees manage the retirement fund according to the best interest of the members. So in that instance, if you had financial dependents, the financial dependents are the ones that should benefit from your retirement fund, regardless of whether you're in debt or insolvent. The same thing happens at death. Okay, and death and wills are very important in this case. At death, when you die in South Africa and in a lot of Western countries, because we apply a lot of the principles in how we deal with these things, we've got different taxes that apply when you pass away. The main one is called estate duty. We've got capital gains tax. We've got a lot of fees that you have to pay when you pass away. If you have a retirement fund, that is not included in any of those taxes or those calculations. So it's kept completely separate from your estate because it sits under the board of the trustees and they will distribute that according to who your financial dependents are. The last point there is just to say that even if you have a will, and we've spoken about wills before in our meetings, even if you have a will where you stipulate that somebody must have X percentage of your retirement fund when you pass away, the board of trustees can override that if they find that there are other financial dependents that must get those funds. So a member of a retirement fund has very limited control over how that money is distributed if they're unable to distribute it themselves. So if you pass away or something like that, the trustees will determine how that money is distributed. Now, most of the time, the people that are on your will will be the people that are your financial dependents. So it's not a problem. But if you've got for example, a child outside of marriage, as an example, that no one knew about, that child can claim against your retirement fund, and they'll legally will be able to successfully claim that, because according to the trustees, they'll be considered a financial dependent, even though you did not add them to a will. So I think that's very critical to understand. And those are the big differences you will find between a normal investment fund, where it's included in your estate. When you pass away, you put your beneficiaries, the fund will pay it out to your beneficiaries, your children, to whoever you put on your will. The retirement fund is a bit different from that. And you've got very little say in how it gets distributed. Okay, so in the world of retirement funds, and I like these talks to be very general, because there's a lot of products in the market and there's a lot of noise. So we have to try and take it back just one level above, to understand what exactly these products are trying to achieve. So in the retirement industry, there's two types of benefits you get in retirement. You've got what's called a defined benefit, and you've got a defined contribution. So if you worked in a government a company, maybe you were a doctor or an engineer and you worked for the government, what you would have got is a pension. Okay, that pension would have been a defined benefit. So a defined benefit means that they say, because you've worked for us for 25 years, based on your number of years, based on your final salary at retirement age, this is how much you will get until you die. Okay, and they give you a very direct number based on that formula. Okay, so that used to be the norm in the industry for a long time, probably about 1980, 85, maybe 90s. All retirement funds were called defined benefit funds. Okay, so when you retire, you know exactly that they will give you X amount at retirement until you pass away. With time, what companies have found is that they are taking on the risk, because what happens is they promise to give you 10 Rand, but the fund where they're investing your money is not growing. So regardless of what happens to that fund, they have to give you your 10 Rand. Okay. Over time, they've decided to shift that risk to the employee. Okay, so what that means now, they created this structure called defined contribution. A defined contribution means all I know is that I have to contribute X amount every month. My contributions will be invested in a fund. That fund will be invested in the market. And as that investment grows, my retirement money, we hope that will also perform well. But if my retirement fund does not perform well, it is not the fund's fault, or it's not the company's fault, because I take on that risk. Okay, so the investment companies have shifted the risk from the employer to the employee. So that's now made it a lot more difficult for people that are not financially literate, because effectively, if your retirement fund is not going to give you what you expected, it's your fault, because you have a defined contribution. You can decide where that money is invested. It's a bit unfair, but that's how the market have structured these things. So right now in the market, 99% of all the provident or pension or retirement annuities are defined contribution, meaning that the person that's contributing to that fund is the one that takes on the risk. If that fund does not perform, you have no recourse. The defined benefits were mostly for governments, but now with digitization, with everything becoming financialized, they are also moving away from that. So everything is going to be defined contribution going forward. Okay, so conceptually, the retirement, the way your money is invested for retirement versus how you invest it for any investment in the market is not too different, but the biggest difference there is the legal restrictions. Okay, so in South Africa, we have a law called Regulation 28. Okay, and Regulation 28 is just a law that's put in place to limit how investment companies can invest your retirement money. So remember, the minute a fund is classified as a retirement fund, there are certain laws that come into play. One of the laws is called Regulation 28, and it will basically say something like, you cannot invest more than 75% in shares. You cannot invest more than 1% of this employer's money in crypto, for example, because it's high risk. So if you think back to the meeting we had 2 weeks ago, when we spoke about asset classes, asset allocation, and things like that, the same principles apply to retirement funds, in that we are still investing in assets. So that's not different. The biggest difference is there's restrictions into where we can invest. So a retirement fund cannot just take all its money and invest it in crypto, for example. It can't do that. Legally, it cannot do that. Okay. Because of that, that means the retirement fund is less risky, or supposed to be less risky. And that also means it doesn't have as much room to maneuver and to make the kind of decisions a normal fund will be able to make. So I think one of the things we have to bear in mind here, yes, Regulation 28 applies, but also when it comes to retirement funds, the the structures are a little bit different in how they're allowed to invest. And also that the money that you invest for a retirement fund cannot necessarily be invested in the same way that you would invest in other funds. Now, retirement funds will typically invest in things like bonds, corporate bonds, government bonds, or what we call fixed income or fixed interest bearing instruments, so low risk instruments. And they'll also invest in some shares, what we call equity. So depending on your age, depending on how much time you have to retire, that strategy or that asset allocation, as we call it, will be determined by your advisor or your company, and they'll then put together a strategy on where to invest. So investing, and I hope that at this stage, this slide at least looks familiar. Investing is always a very, it's the same process. You need to have very clear objectives. Okay, so retirement, that's an objective. What is your time horizon? Time horizon means how long are you investing for? So in the case of retirement, you're looking at 15 years plus. And because of 15 years, what experts in the market will say 15 years is enough time for the market to fluctuate, but to give you a good return. Okay, but the requirements for someone that wants to invest in their retirement is still the same. You need to have a clear objective. You need to understand how much you want to retire with. It's important to do that math. It's very basic math to say, if I earn 1,000 Rand now and I want to earn 1,000 Rand in 15 years time, taking into account inflation, how much is that? And then you can work backwards. You need to understand exactly what that retirement plan looks like. And then you need to consider tax. So another thing before I get off the slide, liquidity and accessibility. With retirement funds, they penalize you for trying to withdraw your money before the retirement age, okay? In South Africa, if you take out what's called a retirement annuity, you're allowed to take out the money. The early retirement that you're allowed to take is 55. Okay, so you're allowed to take your money at 55. But even when you take out your money, so if you take out your money at retirement, you're allowed to take 1/3. Okay, so 1/3 of that money you can take as a lump sum, as they call it, a lump sum. The 2/3 of the money you have to invest in what they call an annuity. Okay, an annuity is something like a retirement annuity or something that will give you regular income over time. So retirement is very strict in when you can take the money out. If you take it out before 55, you are taxed very heavily. If you take it out after 55, you can only take out 1/3, and the 2/3 you have to use it to invest in an annuity. I'll talk about tax now. Okay. So I mentioned there that retirement funds are heavily taxed. In fact, if you go on the SARS website, they have a separate table with what they call withdrawal benefits. I'll see if I can find it before the presentation. Withdrawal benefits means when you leave a company and you decide that you want to take that retirement fund money and use it somewhere else, that money will get taxed very heavily because they're punishing you for taking the retirement money out. If you take that money out, depending on the rule of the fund, because different funds will have different rules, if you take the money out after 55, you will be allowed to take the 1/3 tax-free, and the 2/3 that's left in the fund, you have to purchase an annuity. That annuity is taxed. It's taxed based on your marginal tax rate. Okay. So again, I'm speaking very specifically to how it works in South Africa, but especially in other Western countries where they have very similar laws in terms of how they treat pensions. So it's very, very punitive on people that try to use their pension before retirement. In some countries, you're not even allowed to do that. So back in the past, actually before this year, you were able to take money out of your provident fund. So if your company had a provident fund, they would allow you to take money out of it as a lump sum. They've now also stopped that going forward. So whether you have a pension fund, a provident fund, or retirement annuity, all of those get treated the same way. You have to take a third out at retirement age, 65, or if they allow for early retirement, which is 55, you can take a third. The 2/3, you have to use it to purchase a living annuity or some kind of annuity. So anything outside of that is going to be a problem. They do also offer benefits. So for example, if you take out a retirement annuity with any institution in South Africa and you pay monthly contributions to that annuity, SARS allows you to claim your contributions back at the end of the year. So if you're spending 1,000 Rand a year for retirement annuity, you can go to SARS and get that money back into your account. Of course, it's to encourage you, but they'll still tax you anyway when you retire. So it's double-sided. Okay, so I think just to summarize, retirement should be considered in respect of your investment horizon. So how long do you have before you retire? What are your expenses? What are your living expenses now? What do you think your expenses will be after retirement? For many people, your expenses also goes down when you retire. Maybe you've paid for the bond already, you've paid for the cars, you don't have any more debts, it's just living expenses. But the point of this is you have to start planning. You have to plan, you have to think about it, put it down on paper, write it down, and actually start putting together a plan and just get a view, because sometimes you'll see a number and it will shock you that, you know, this is how much you need to be able to live for 30 years when you're not working. Younger investors, people that are younger, you have to start as soon as possible. Start even with 100 Rand that you can put down. Start investing or planning for your retirement. It's very important and it comes faster than we think. And just the idea of planning for your finances is very important. It's a discipline. It's like a muscle. Once you start doing it, you apply it in many different ways and it can only benefit you over time. Retirement plans evolve over the years. So because you are looking at 20, 30 years type of investment, a lot of things can change. Your life circumstances can change. The laws in the country can change. So you should always be flexible to look and see what else is out there in the market, what is happening, and how your plan can be readjusted to still be successful. I think another thing we can add about retirement is that once you retire, it's too late. It's too late to catch up those years. When we talk about investment, there's a concept called compound interest, meaning that you're making interest on top of the interest. The interest that you make, the compound interest that you make in 5 years, it's difficult to catch up to that after you've retired. Okay. The other problem you have also, when you're too old, you can't take on too much risk, because if you lose that money, you've lost your life savings. So you want to try and invest as early as possible, and you want to try and invest with anything that you do have. So we don't want to look at retirement as separate from investing. They work together, but it's a type of investing that's more specific and it has a very specific goal. So just to close it off, I can also say this. Retirement funds are known for charging a lot of high fees. If there's some of you on this call, maybe you're already retired and you had a retirement annuity. When the money comes out, you notice that it's actually a lot less than what you expected. So retirement annuities are known for charging very high fees. Unfortunately, it's something that a lot of people have complained about in the past, because they're investing your money for 20 years. They find a lot of ways to make money from you. That's unfortunate. The incentives are not always on your side. So I think that when we look at retirement planning, we have to think broadly about how we plan for retirement. We have to think about all the different assets we have at our disposal to plan for retirement. It doesn't have to be just a pension, a provident fund, or a retirement annuity. A business can be a good retirement plan. If your business is doing well, why can it not be a retirement plan? In South Africa right now, we have a product called a tax-free savings account. Okay, so it's just like any normal investment, but when you invest in that fund, it's protected from tax. There's no tax on that fund. You can use something like that for retirement as well. It's a good vehicle. So we have to think about this broadly and not just follow the herd to say, okay, for retirement, you must get a retirement annuity, you must have a pension, you must have a provident fund, a preservation fund. Yes, those things are all good, but I think for us to be financially independent, we have to think broadly about what assets can we invest in over a long term that can be used for retirement. CoopCongo, for example, over a long term can be a good retirement plan for a lot of people. So I think that's just the point I want to make on that. Yes, and that's the presentation. I don't know if there are any questions, comments.
Thank you very much, Eric. And I apologize for joining late. We had the problem with security. Likely the chairman fixed it, so we are all able to connect. With now, the floor is open for us to put our questions forward. But I'd like to ask one question. You start with one question. If, let's say, I have 2 retirement annuities with 2 organizations, but I see that they're moving, I put a bit of money this side, a bit of money that side. Is there a possibility that the law allows you to maybe move from one investment company to consolidate with one company?
Yes, thanks for that question. Yes, so the law does allow that. It's called a Section 23 transfer. So basically, you take all the funds from one company to transfer that money into another company. Is that correct?
Yes, that was
yes. Yes, the law does allow that, and they won't tax you for doing something like that. It's completely fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? Comment about the savings. Est-ce que nous avons des gens qui parlent seulement français, qui n'ont pas compris, par exemple, qui voudraient qu'on puisse un peu leur expliquer en français?
Edouard, je crois que vous pouvez faire un résumé en français parce que si M. Malé, vous pouvez aller peut-être au dernier, la dernière diapositive. Comme ça, on peut faire un résumé en français, juste un petit résumé pour ceux qui sont en français. Ouais.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais vraiment essayer de faire mon mieux. J'ai un problème. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez bien. J'ai un problème avec...
Oui, on entend bien.
Je dois connecter parfois avec le cellulaire, parfois le laptop, la voix part. Okay. Je vais essayer de parler. Bon, le chairman ou quelqu'un d'autre va aussi me compléter. Donc, en résumé, l'âge de la pension en Afrique du Sud, c'est 65 ans. Et vous pouvez aussi aller à la pension avant l'âge de 65 ans. Et cet âge, c'est 55 ans. Et en Afrique du Sud, il y a beaucoup de produits que vous pouvez investir pour votre pension. Donc, lorsque vous aurez atteint l'âge de 65 ans, vous ne pouvez plus travailler. Il y a beaucoup de produits qui sont dans le marché. Il y a le Provident Fund, souvent c'est dans l'entreprise même, il y a un pourcentage qui vient de ton salaire et l'autre pourcentage, c'est l'entreprise qui paye pour toi, pour ta pension. Le retirement annuity, c'est ce que tu ouvres toi-même avec les autres banques. Tu veux booster de l'argent lorsque tu seras en pension, tu veux avoir un peu plus. Comme Eric a dit, normalement, bon, Eric, c'est un financial planner, donc il est bien disposé pour nous aider individuellement aussi à préparer nos pensions convenablement. Quelque chose qu'il a dit aussi, en Afrique du Sud, ici, le taux des gens qui, lorsqu'ils atteignent 65 ans, sont capables d'aller de prendre leur pension décemment, c'est moins de 15%. Et avec le Covid ici, certainement, ça a baissé même en dessous de 10%. Donc, on peut, pendant que nous sommes forts, nous travaillons, on peut bien préparer notre pension. Je sais que chez nous au Congo, nous avons l'habitude de dépendre de nos enfants. Mais pendant que nous sommes forts, nous travaillons, nous pouvons casser ces liens de dépendance de nos enfants. Lorsque nous aurons atteint l'âge de la pension, nous pouvons nous prendre nous-mêmes en charge. Et nos enfants peuvent aussi vivre une vie paisible. Et, lorsque nous préparons notre pension, nous devons prendre des calculs, tout ça, je crois que j'ai un peu expliqué. Bon, le financial planner, que Eric est là pour nous aider avec ça. Commençons à préparer nos pensions les plus tôt possible, surtout pour les jeunes. Vous pouvez investir ne fût-ce que 100 rand chaque mois. Et après beaucoup d'années, vous verrez une différence dans votre investissement. Et puis, bon, il faut aussi revisiter vos investissements de là où vous mettez votre argent de pension. Il faut revisiter de temps en temps pour que votre argent ne soit pas... Vous pouvez vous retrouver après beaucoup d'années, vous n'avez pas beaucoup d'argent, mais si vous consultez votre financial planner de temps en temps, il va vous aider à placer l'argent là où vous aurez un peu de capital. Je ne sais pas si j'ai oublié d'autres endroits. Merci.
Yes. Merci, secrétaire général. J'ai eu des questions ici. I've received a few direct questions, so I'll try to answer them. Maybe other people have the same question. So the first question is, can you elaborate a bit on the SARS tax claim if one has a retirement annuity? Okay, so SARS will allow you to claim up to 15% of what they call your pensionable salary. Okay, so your pensionable salary is your basic salary. So that's your salary excluding things like if you get allowance or cell phone allowance or petrol allowance or anything like that, that pensionable salary of 15% of that pensionable salary amount can be used as a retirement, can be used to pay for a retirement annuity. At the end of the year, that value can be claimed back from SARS. What companies will do, depending on the company where you've invested that with that retirement annuity, they'll give you a tax certificate at the end of the financial year. They'll give you a tax certificate, or you can ask for a tax certificate. That tax certificate, you can then submit it to SARS, and they will then refund you your money. The second question I got was, how does SARS do the deduction? Yeah, so the deduction is very straightforward. It's 15% of your pensionable salary. So your pensionable salary is 1,000 Rand. It will take 15% of that 1,000 Rand, and it will say that is the maximum that you're allowed to deduct for retirement. So the smart thing to do is to not spend more than 15% of your pensionable salary in a retirement annuity, because that is the money that you know you can get back. It's basically free. If you think about it, you'll get it back from SARS. Anything more than 15%, you don't get anything back from SARS on stuff like that. If one wants to relocate the retirement annuity, will it be tax heavy? So relocate, the Secretary General mentioned something about moving from one retirement annuity to another. That's called, I just double checked, it's not section 23, it's called section 14. That is allowed. So if you want to take your retirement annuity from Old Mutual to Sanlam to Allen Gray or whatever, that's fine. There's a section 14 transfer that allows you to do that. If you are relocating countries, maybe you are emigrating, you're going to another country, that's treated as a withdrawal. And then they'll then apply those tax penalties that they apply for withdrawals. So if you're just moving to another fund, that's fine. If you're moving to another country and you want to leave South Africa or you're emigrating, that's treated as a withdrawal. And then I got one more question. One must be realistic. What is the best way to plan for retirement? Banking product or own assets? That is a very difficult question because your retirement plan has to be personalized. If you go to speak to a financial planner and they give you a very generic retirement solution, then it's a problem. Retirement plan needs to take into account your age, needs to take into account when you're going to retire, needs to take into account your expenses, your living standards. It has to be holistic. You know, that's why I don't like these presentations we have to just be about get a retirement annuity at Allen Gray or take this one out at Sanlam because it's performing well. It's not about that. It's about personalized. What are your living standards? What are your requirements? What do you want to do after retirement? For example, maybe you feel that at 70, you want to be able to buy a car. How do you plan for that now? Maybe you want to buy a car every 10 years, or you want to travel when you retire. Not everyone wants to sit at home. They want to visit the family. Maybe they have grandkids in the US or in Europe. They want to go see them. How do you plan for that? So that has to be taken into account. And you don't necessarily have to achieve that through a retirement annuity. There's a lot of other avenues, but they have to get a picture of you as an individual. What is that full picture before you can give a solution?
Thank you very much, Eric. We have one question, Dr. Polika. Vous pouvez poser votre question, merci.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Chairperson. Je n'ai pas entendu plus de détails sur la différence des autres types de funds, especially between a Provident Fund and Preservation Fund. I think you said a bit more on retirement annuity and so on. Maybe it could have been better if you could have like a kind of a table with all the 4 types of funds, which include pension, RA, Provident, and Preservation Fund, and different characteristic of it. Then this one, which has, you tick it. If it doesn't have that characteristic, you don't tick it. It will give us a good idea on the true differences between those 4 types of funds. Yeah, that's just my question. But as a comment also for those who want to relocate to another country, if you want to relocate after 55, as he said, then instead, I think what you can do, you can also just get your living annuity, withdraw 1/3. invest the rest in a living annuity, then maintain an account in South Africa, and where you just, get paid your living annuity in that account, then you don't pay too much tax as if you were withdrawing all your money. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Merci. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for those comments. So with regards to differences between pension, provident, and retirement annuity, the reason why I did not put a table is because the government or the government is now phasing out those differences. Okay. So in the past, the pension fund and the provident fund had one big difference. The provident fund, you could take out a whole lump sum, where the pension fund, you could only take a third at retirement. The retirement annuity was independent of your employer. Okay, so pension, provident were provided by your employer. The retirement annuity were provided by private companies. The only difference is that the provident, you could take a lump sum. Pension, retirement annuity, you could only take a third at retirement as a lump sum. What the government is doing now, in fact, from next year, there will be no difference between a pension fund, a provident fund, a retirement annuity. So they've normalized those differences. The difference used to just be about when you can access the money. Now they've now normalized that. The pension fund and the provident fund is different only by name. Right now, some companies will call it a pension fund, some companies will call it a provident fund, but when you take the money out, you can only take a third. So there's no big, it could be different in the past. So if you've been working, those won't change, but going forward, those will all be the same. The other thing that I did not mention is the preservation fund. So the preservation fund is the money that you can put your lump sum in. So when you take out a third, you can put that in a preservation fund. And that's just the fund to preserve your money for capital growth. But in terms of retirement funds, you really have those three options: your retirement annuity, your pension, and your provident fund. And they're all governed by that same Pension Funds Act. So they all fall under the same law. They all require you to take a third as a lump sum and the 2/3 to buy an annuity. They're all taxed exactly the same way, with the proviso that the retirement annuity is independent from your employer. The other two will be coming from the employer. I don't know if that answers your question or your concern.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Boutaïdois? Okay, I think I see no more there. Thank you very much,
Allô?
Mr. Oh, okay, he's back.
Je présente mes excuses. Donc, ce qui vient de se passer, c'est nous sommes maintenant sur load shedding. Donc, j'ai perdu le network automatiquement, comme on utilise le Wi-Fi ici à la maison. Donc, je me suis connecté maintenant avec le petit data. Et puis, bon, je voudrais présenter les excuses. On a commencé un peu en retard et nous avons dépassé déjà de 6 minutes. Je ne sais pas si nous devons continuer. Monsieur Chairman, je voudrais vous passer la parole.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Monsieur Malébé, j'avais seulement, en tout cas, vous allez m'excuser de poser cette question, s'il vous plaît. Vous avez dit que nous devons, dans la communauté, essayer we need to change our mindset. Nous devons changer notre façon de faire pour que nous puissions commencer à donner de l'importance à la préparation vers la pension. So you said we should change our mindset so that we take care of the retirement planning. What is it that we really need to do to benefit our community members for that, so that we change the mindset? And also another question is, sometimes I hear people saying, no, for women, the retirement age is different from men. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Chair. That first question is a bit difficult. I'll give it some thought. But the second question, yes, women do have a different retirement age to men. It's 60. Actually, I was discussing it with my wife recently because she said it doesn't make sense. Women live longer than men. Why are they asked to retire earlier? I don't know. But yes, there is a difference in age. I can just add to that it's very important to know the rules of the retirement fund you're invested in. So different funds will have certain rules that they allow and not allow. Things like age, they can have a different age. So they may have 60, but they may also have an age for what they call early retirement. Okay, so those rules are very important depending on the fund, but generally speaking, the ages are different. In terms of what we need to do as a community to start thinking about these things, I think that's a very difficult question, and I don't know if it can even be answered with like one sentence. I think that we have a lot of, number one, we don't have the financial literacy in our community, generally speaking. We do not put in the time or do not have the resources to be able to access this information. So financial literacy has to improve in our community. I think the other thing as well is we do not generally have a culture of saving. So even when we save, it's a very short-term type of activity where we're not saving for something that's long-term, that sometimes you don't exactly see where it's going, but in the back of your mind, you've planned it and you're saving towards those goals. So yeah, it's very difficult because for me, I think even when we talk about retirement and mindset, is just one aspect of finance in our community, where really financial literacy has to improve, and we need to have more of these discussions. You know, in my ideal situation, something like a discussion like this should be with a panel. If we can have a panel of 5, 10, maybe financial experts, financial advisors, they can talk to us about the different options, the different companies. I think that will really encourage people to get more involved. A lot of the time, people that have money, that have the funds to be able to plan for their retirement, would rather spend their money on something else that will give a short-term benefit. They don't see the use of it. So I think we need to have more financial literacy. We have more discussions. Let's have more experts, and let's socialize. Because sometimes also, I'm giving very long answers, but sometimes also I find that the terminology the financial world uses can be very confusing, and it can be intimidating. So for example, like the question we got there from the doctor about a provident fund, a pension fund, or retirement annuity. For people in the industry, they understand that we're talking about retirement funds, and that's one umbrella. So someone will say, I have an Alan Gray annuity, for example, or I have a provident fund from my company. But really, you are talking about the same things. It's just that there are certain rules that may be a little bit different in this fund or in that fund, or the age may be different or stuff. But when it comes to things like tax, when it comes to laws, the Pension Funds Act, Income Tax Act, it's all the same. So I think that just comes with us being exposed to these things and keep talking about it and learning from each other. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think we went through what was necessary for us to share. We may
Sorry, Chair, I see there's a hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I did not see. Sorry about that. Let's go for the hand. Yeah, Dr. Polika.
Yeah, so sorry to take your time. Now I wanted just to contribute a bit about the age of retirement for women. As the speaker said, is 60 years, but you are not. But women are not obligated to retire at 60. They can go up to 65 because we've got colleagues. I've worked with colleague women who have retired at 65. But the only difference is if a man retires at 60, it is considered as an early retirement. But if a woman retires at 60, it is considered as she has retired at the correct age. So it will be considered as a normal retirement. But for a man at 60, it will be considered as an early retirement. Then there are different calculations which are done for an early retirement, like there is, I think, some 2 or 3% of penalty which you get taxed. But if a woman retires at 60, they are not going to penalize for that 5 years. But she's not obligated to retire at 60. If she wants, she can still go up to 65 and retire at 65. So that's just addition which I wanted to clarify on that side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Mama Justine, you can just unmute.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, me, I wanted just to add on Eric's answer to the chairman's question. What can we do for the community? I think Mr. Malebe answered it nicely, but I wanted just to add, we have just to continue really to try to organize this kind of session or training within our community, because really what we have to show our community is just the benefit and what are the consequences of not having retirement plan. We will recall all what is happening in our country, among our family, how our parents are called sorcier and English, witchcraft. Sorcier. Personally, I believe it's just because our parents, they didn't have money, and when they retire, they reach that age, they don't have a meaning, and they depend to the children when asking, and it brings to a situation where the parents are called sorcier, which is not nice because they are depending on the children. And our generation, we have to be prepared so that if we reach, God gives us that chance to reach that age, it should not happen with us being dependent on the children. So that is the one of the benefit of having the retirement plan. Is very important that we really take this retirement plan serious. That is what I wanted just to say.
Thank you very much, Mama Justine. I would like to ask Eric, maybe you can give us a last word because we have gone beyond the time. I'd like to apologize to our audience. We're supposed to end at 6, but we went a little bit beyond. We took your time. Donc, je voudrais un peu présenter les excuses que nous avons dépassé un peu notre temps. On a pris de votre temps. Eric, si vous pouvez nous donner le mot de la fin. Après, je vais passer le mot au chairman pour fermer.
Okay, merci. Thank you. Again, thank you for the questions. I think these discussions are always better when we have questions, when we have comments, then we can learn from each other. I think these sessions work better that way. What I can say again, to reiterate what Mama Justine said about we all of us on this call understand that retirement is important. We have to plan for retirement. We have to change that mindset. We should not be scared by all these financial terms. When you break down the financial terms, you realize it's actually very basic concepts. So that's very important. And also I can just add that we need to have more of these more of these discussions. We need to invite more people as well. There's a lot of Congolese people in the financial industry that I think sometimes maybe are not aware of how they can contribute with what they know or what they do. So yeah, I think we just have to keep doing this, and CoopCongo will keep growing from this. Sorry, Secretary General. Also, the last point: if you are planning for your financial, if you are doing your retirement planning, please make sure that it's personalized. A lot of the time, you will go to an institution, a financial institution. They will give you a solution based on what is available in their institution or based on their incentives. So if you go to ABSA, you will get an ABSA representative that will tell you what ABSA can do for you, which is not bad, but I think it's very important that you sit down with that individual or that institution and you explain to them your goals, you give them a full picture of a full financial picture, and your plan, the solution must come from the full picture. It must not just be buy this retirement annuity, put 5,000 and everything will be okay. It must be comprehensive and consider your family, your plans, what you want to do when you retire, your debts, etc. It must not just be that you're buying a product and then you forget about it, because that can also end very badly in the future. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je crois nous devons, je veux partager programmer encore après quelques mois avec le panel comme Eric a proposé. Le panel, nous avons nos jeunes très intelligents comme Eric, et c'est eux qui s'occupent même de nos policiers pour tout ce qui concerne l'argent. Donc, je vais organiser avec eux un panel là où ils viendront faire des discussions pour nous aider davantage. Ça, je vais le faire. Merci beaucoup. Je vais passer la parole maintenant au chairman pour la clôture aussi. Merci.
Non, merci beaucoup. C'est un grand plaisir pour nous de voir que nous pouvons partager ce temps et apprendre. Merci beaucoup à M. Malebe pour avoir pu se faire volontaire pour ces éditions. Il y a la semaine prochaine, dans 2 semaines, le 27 mars, il reviendra pour les risques planification des risques et budget. Donc, we will have risks planning and budgeting in 2 weeks' time. Donc, dans 2 semaines, on aura encore M. Malebe pour partager encore de son temps. Merci à tous les membres et tous les autres membres de la communauté qui sont venus. Veillons à encourager nos membres des familles, nos frères, nos sœurs, nos amis à venir partager avec nous 1 hour, 7 heures, pour que nous puissions tous apprendre. So let's really invite brothers, sisters, friends, so that we share this time and learn together so that we all grow and try solve these problems as a community. Thank you very much again, Mr. Malebe. Thank you to all of you that shared this time. We're all learning, and I'm sure we will all benefit. Back to you, Mr. Jeka, the Secretary General. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Chairman. Comme j'avais dit, on a pris beaucoup de votre temps. Nous vous présentons nos excuses. Merci beaucoup, mais le sujet était vraiment très important et nous reviendrons sur ce sujet dans le futur. Have a good Sunday. On se revoit dans 2 semaines. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Chairman, comme on a pris...